All right, cool. Let's break.
This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, Root of Power podcast fam. Y'all, we have Sarah Ramsey back because she was so good the first time. And she reached out and she was like, I am writing a new book, which amazing. So jealous. Love it for you. And I was like, yes, please bless us again with all this knowledge. And she has a framework for decision making that, like, I know so many people struggle with. And I'm excited to hear the framework because I feel like every time I talk to you, I'm just like, I just get so many good chicken nuggies. And I'm like, I want more chicken nuggies. So, dude, welcome back. Like, hi.
Yay! Well, Amanda is like my girl crush. I mean, it was so funny because then you came on my podcast and it was just this whole like thing because we were just like, are we soulmates? Like, I feel like
we might be.
We might be. Everything you would say, it was like, yes, like that's exactly how I would say it or whatever. So
yeah, entrepreneur mates. I don't know. How do we call it?
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. No, it's yes. Yeah. So super excited. Yeah. So my past work has been in toxic relationships, helping people become toxic person proof. My first book, Becoming Toxic Person Proof. And obviously after a very controlling parent, partner, whatever boss, whatever it is, your kind of decision-making muscles are just like messed up.
Yeah.
Right. There's something just
tell us why. Why does that
happen? Well, absolutely. So when I use the term, what problem are you trying to solve? Okay. So if you're in a toxic relationship, typically the problem you're trying to solve is, how do I not tick them off? How do I make them happy? How do I not make them mad? How do I get through the day? How do I avoid a blow up? Okay, so those become the main problems you're trying to solve. Okay. But
yes,
how to not tick off your parent or partner or boss, it's not necessarily translatable in decisions that are in your best interest. Right. As you build a future, build a life, parent, build a business, whatever it is, like the skill set of how do I not tick off other people, hashtag people pleasing.
Right.
Because
the focus is wrong. Like we're making them the sun instead of making us the sun. So the focus is literally backwards.
Yes.
Like obviously I call it building a prison one bar at a time. So like every single time we outsource our power, every single time we outsource our happiness, our choices, we self-betray. It's like we take they hand us another bar and we take it and we say, okay, this is the new prison. Like this is my new limit. This is the new thing. And pretty soon we end up with a life that like we don't choose. We don't choose because we're always choosing them. And it's like such a space. I feel like a lot of people don't talk about how fucking miserable and like draining that space is. To never have control of your own life or learn how to make decisions is so energy intensive. But I feel like that's not talked about a lot.
Well, and my whole spiel, right? Like my whole business, like every single thing, they literally call me the success fairy. And they're like, how are your women getting promotions? How are they doing this? How do they keep getting raises? Because exactly what you just said, that concept, there's so much energy put into how do I avoid making them mad, them, how do I make them happy? How do I make them look good? How do I make myself small so they are okay? Okay, let's just take that same amount of energy. It's not more work. It's literally less work. I'm asking you to do less work and make more money.
Right. Not more money. Yes, more money, but not only more money, right?
Like not only more money. No.
You're just
life.
Thank you for saying that because I say that all the time and I feel like people don't get it. Like it's literally the same amount of work, except it actually works.
Yes.
So like you make one or two decisions and things continue to roll on versus having to make a million decisions and none of them actually work. Now, it's like when you like jerry rig something instead of just fixing it.
Yeah.
Like you have to keep jerry rigging it forever instead of just fixing it right the first time. then it works.
Mhm.
Like, oh my God, yes. Where am I going with this? Why do toxic people
Mhm.
train you not to make decisions? Why do they train women, men to center them instead of themselves? Like, why does that dynamic happen? Because I think a lot of people don't think about it either.
So my favorite way to explain this is the concept of taking turns.
Okay.
Okay. Preschool children are taught to take turns. This is a
Ideally.
very basic, yeah,
Right.
ideally, but I mean, if you go to kindergarten, if you go to preschool, I mean,
Right.
at some point, some adults said you have to learn how to take turns. It is
Right.
as basic to our humanity as going potty. Like
Yeah.
that, like young and early, like,
Yeah.
no, that's Johnny's turn. We need to give that
Right.
back to her, what, whatever. And so that's a very basic concept that maybe we'll say be generous and say 5% of humanity just missed. And that's
Sure.
incredibly generous. I
Yeah.
mean, that
Yeah.
means they were homeschooled. They were probably only child homeschooled.
Sure.
It was
Yeah.
always their turn, right? Well, toxic people think it's always their turn, but they're adults, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, well, who gets the money? Ah, it's my turn. Who gets
Mm.
their moods? Well, it's my turn. Who
Mm.
gets the best end of the deal? Well, it's my turn. Who gets the advantage in this situation? Well, it's my turn. Who gets to avoid responsibility?
Yeah.
Well, it's my turn, right? So it's literally always their turn.
Chicken nuggets.
Chicken nuggets, right?
Chicken
Yeah,
nuggets.
and that's where, and I mean, I know you understand, like, I believe gaslighting is real. I believe
Oh God.
trauma bonding is
Yeah,
real.
obviously.
Obviously, all those things.
Obviously.
But sometimes this is such a new concept in narcissism and personality disorders, and it's a new conversation when you think
Yeah.
about the last 100 years and last
Sure.
however many years there have been humans. It's a very new conversation. And so sometimes a concept like trauma bonding is just really complicated. Like,
Yeah.
what
It's
is a toxic
big.
person?
Yeah,
what
right.
what is this? It gets so big and so complicated. And it's like, hey, if you're with a 50-year-old who hasn't figured out how to take turns, let's guess, I'm not betting my money on them changing.
You know what's so funny? I was talking to my friends about this Sunday night, I think. And I was saying, I love that you mentioned a 50-year-old. So I'm 31. And I was saying that there are some red flags for decision makings, right? And toxic people in general. One is a big age gap.
Mhm.
And they were like, well, I don't see anything wrong with an age gap. And I said, listen, if a 20-year-old is dating a 40-year-old, I want you to think about why.
Mhm.
And they were like, well, maybe they have things in common. I said, what the fuck does a 20-year-old have in common with a 40? Yeah, thank you. That was my face. And I said, they want to groom them.
Yes.
They want to groom them. So a lot of, and I know that you know this, but I want to explain it for our listeners. I was going to say readers, but you know what I mean. A lot of people who are toxic, who believe it's always their turn, believe a couple other things. One is that their partner, their child, their whatever, literally doesn't deserve to make choices. They don't deserve to have a say. It's like the belief that like kids should be seen and not heard, but like taken to the extreme. Your partner should be seen and not heard. Your employees should be seen and not heard, but it's like obviously the extreme level. And so they don't think you deserve a say. And if you grew up in that dynamic, you would think that was your normal. If you grew up in a house that speaks English, you're going to speak English as an adult. If you grew up in a house that speaks silence and compliance, you're going to find someone who fits that narrative because you don't know any differently. And then you compound that with the fact that a lot of these people will grow older, but their partners stay the same age or their employees stay the same age. And it's like, it's when you recognize the pattern, I think it's so easy to recognize, but a lot of people, thank God we're talking about it, a lot of people don't know enough to recognize patterns. Not that like, listen, don't come at me, age difference people. They're like, my husband and I are 10 ages. I don't care. Like sometimes it works, most of the time it doesn't. It is just something to be aware of.
Yeah. I call it collecting data.
Thank you. Yes.
And there's kind of this concept of like, that's weird. Okay. So
I don't know why.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, that's weird. Let's just collect more data. Just be
Right.
aware. It's not
Right.
just like, this is a great idea. Like lean in,
Right.
lean in, wonderful. And so, I mean, I used to teach a mental health. I ran a mental health campaign for teens.
Oh,
Okay,
amazing.
in my local area, there was a cheerleader who was
I'm
killed by her
obsessed with you.
boyfriend.
Oh
Oh,
shit. That's not
thank you.
okay.
There was a cheerleader who was killed by her boyfriend. Her name
Yeah.
was Emma Walker. And you
Poor
like
thing.
her color was purple. Your hair, but
Hmm.
like, yeah, when I've done stuff, I've worn purple. Like it's the
Yeah.
domestic violence, and it was her favorite color, and it's just a
Hmm.
terribly
Connection.
tragic story. There's
Right.
like a Dateline like on it. I mean, it
Jesus.
was like
Yeah.
in my area, but it was this like national news and stuff. And within that concept, the main thing I taught teens, okay, is that you are used to having parents or
Mhm.
teachers. Like at that time, there are authority figures that was
Right.
appropriate.
You're used to a
Okay.
power differential.
You're used to, yes, but in a romantic relationship, it should not feel that way.
Right.
Right. At that
Right.
point, you need to feel even, you need to feel like a match, you need to feel like
Mm.
partners. And quite honestly, I think that's why people, through no fault of their own, just this is a new
Mhm.
conversation. Like even if there's not been dysfunction in the childhood
Sure.
and stuff, it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. To that age group, even a 20 something, it's normal
Right.
to
To
have
have a power
authority
imbalance.
figures, to have a power imbalance. So
That's
then
so
this 40
true.
year old is swooping in to pick up the 20-year
Mhm.
old who is already, just because they're 20, is used to that power
Right.
imbalance.
I never thought about that.
That was the easiest way I could teach
Yeah.
teens,
You're super
because
right.
I was like, yeah, you're used to parents, you're used to kind of having to do what people say, them having
Yeah.
more say than you. It's kind of mainly being your parents' turn,
Right.
and there's everything was
Yeah.
functioning. It's the toxic people that swoop in and
Right.
like
Why
use it
does
to their
it benefit
advantage.
them to take your decision-making muscles away?
How does it not benefit them?
Let's
I
talk about
think
it
is
because people don't know.
yeah.
Talk to me about
Yeah,
it.
I think yeah, it's always their turn. Toxic people want to make the rules,
Mhm.
enforce the rules,
Mhm.
and break the rules.
Can
Your
you
job is to
repeat that?
follow the rules. Yes, yes. So,
To be
and that's when
repeated.
people say, what is a toxic relationship? I'll say that they can't take turns,
Mhm.
or this concept. They get to make the rules, they get to enforce the rules, and they get to break the rules.
Yeah. And it can be
And your
something as
job is to
simple, and your job is to follow
follow the rules. Yeah.
without question
Oh, yeah.
immediately. Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
That's
And they
such
can
a good
change the rules
explanation.
anytime they want.
Right.
Right.
Because they're God.
And yeah, yeah. Um, and Lundy Bancroft, I think in his book, he said it's like they think of you as like their arm. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So if I need hand surgery,
Hmm.
I don't talk it over with my hand. If my hand is not doing what I want it to, I take it into the surgeon, I take it into the doctor, I put it in a brace, I put it in a cast, I get it
Right.
cut open. I don't think, well, I think my hand isn't doing what it's supposed to do. So I have every right in the entire world to make my hand do what it's supposed to do.
Mm. And they get to decide what you're supposed to do.
Oh yeah. So
Yeah.
they think of you as an extension. Heartbreaking when it comes to kids. I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh, yeah.
it just ticks
Yes.
me off to
That's
no
honestly
end,
one of the reasons I don't work with kids
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
it's not the kids.
No.
They have no power. And then the interesting thing that we usually see is that the toxic person will pretend that the victim has power. Well, you made me do this. Well, I made this decision because you did X. So it's like they tie any bad decisions to, the victim's behavior, which then I think reinforces the victim's
Yes.
like that they think their decisions are effed up. They're like, oh
Yeah.
God, like I made a
Yes.
decision and that was bad. So I better abandon all decision making because it only results in trouble. And so
Yes.
they just
Yes.
abandon it.
And in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like we have a need for safety, and that's where
Yes.
it's like these are survival skills that it took you. I talked to a friend yesterday, a male, and he said, I learned how to be a good problem solver because I was always having to figure out how to get my dad not to hit me.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
right.
you know, he's nearly 40 now.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the concept of problem solving, and he's really good at like coding and, you
And
know,
people,
all these types of like
yeah.
advanced technical problems. And I said, well,
Well,
it was a great skill set,
thanks. Yeah.
and with some really bad
Really effed up
outcomes.
consequences. Yeah.
You know, yeah, there's some real consequences because that's it. But within the next book, what I see people really mess up on, okay, is really generalized concepts when it comes to, for instance, healing.
Okay. Explain.
For example, I want to be confident. Okay. Well, some people are confident going outside in a bikini who would never be confident in a public speaking situation. Okay. So when it's like, I want to work on my confidence, that's so broad. And you see this with healers, Amanda.
Yeah.
Right? Like you see this. They're like selling
I'm a
you
confidence
confidence.
coach.
Right. And it's like,
Are you?
What does that mean? Yeah. Right. You know, what does that even mean? Like
Right.
what? And I'm always asking people, what problem are you trying to solve?
Right.
Okay. I want to feel good when I come out in a bikini at the beach is an entirely different action. Excuse me.
You know what's wild is people who struggle to make decisions can't answer that question.
Exactly. Okay. That's why
because that's a decision. There. Right.
That's a decision. Yeah. And that's why we start there. And I was like, look, and I will not work with people who cannot tell me what problems they're trying to solve, because you'll never be happy because you have no idea what you're wanting to do. Right. And so sometimes I'll give people kind of a menu to choose from. Right.
Absolutely. Right.
Like what to say but specifically. Yeah. Like, you know, when other people are crossing my boundaries, what language do I need to use?
Sure.
That is a very specific problem to solve.
Yeah.
Confidence is not a specific problem to solve.
You know what I get a lot is I want to be happy. And I'm like, amazing. I actually give people a framework for that. So happiness and decision-making are very, very, very closely related. Because if you can make decisions, you make decisions that make you happy. If we can't make decisions, you are unhappy, because nothing in your life is yours. Nothing is your choosing. And I don't know that people make that connection, but if you can't, and it can be as simple. I work with a lot of people who cannot, and here's how I know if they've had an imbalanced relationship. I say, do you struggle to figure out what to eat for dinner? And because I already know the answer, because I see enough people like it. And they're like, oh my God, I can never choose what to eat for dinner. And I'm like, your decision-making muscle is so atrophied that you can't decide what to eat. Like, that is a problem. If you can't decide what to eat, you can't decide what career you love, what kind of partner you want, where you want to live, how you want your house to look, what you want to wear. And people want to make these huge, huge, huge decisions. What's my purpose in life? Bitch, you can't figure out what to eat for dinner. Like, I know. We're not at purpose yet.
Well, I asked this person recently and I said, you know, what problem are you trying to solve? And they said, you know, I'm having all these issues in dating, you know, and I said, okay. And I said, so what has your healing strategy been? Like, what has your strategy been to match that problem?
Good question.
And she said, well, I've been working with someone. And I said, awesome. Are they a dating specialist? Is they specialize in dating? And she said, no, it's my minister. And I like her pastor at her church or whatever, who is a guy who hasn't dated in 20 or 30 years, who hasn't been in a toxic relationship. And she has heard enough of my work. She goes, I know what you're going to say about that. And I said, it's not about me.
Right.
Like, that is a terrible strategy. I had someone else.
You're asking the wrong person.
No, yeah. I said, what are you doing to try to heal from a toxic relationship? And she said, I've been hiking and spending time in nature. And I said, awesome. Can you send me some statistics about people who hike are less likely to be taken advantage of by toxic people than people who don't hike?
Did they realize they were being taken to church?
Well, they were like, they always like kind of laugh and they
That
know
is
exactly what I'm
hilarious.
doing. But I'm like, it's not a party trick.
Right.
Like there's nothing nice about somebody walking. You go to the doctor and you have a strep throat. Okay. So you need antibiotics. But there's nothing mean about the doctor saying, you know, well, I'm going to give you the wrong medicine just because you asked for it. Like, that's not nice.
Right. So part of, and that, I think that relates back to decisions too, because I think the decision to get support is hard. It's very hard for people to make, like, facts. It's hard for people to make, but it is also a decision. So a decision to get support also means a decision to dig through your wounds, also means a decision to hold yourself accountable, to hold them accountable, to be sad, to be angry, to feel all those feelings. And all of those are decisions that you have to make along the way. Like I say all the time, this process is not for cowards. People who choose to stay there, and this is going to sound harsh and I say it with love, are cowards. Like, I don't mean that as in they're bad people, but if you want what you say you want, you have to be courageous enough to go get it and to get support. So, and support also looks like having the right support.
This other lady recently, she said, oh, I've been trying to heal for 20 years. And I said, okay, what have you been doing to try to heal for 20 years? And she said, I've been working with this counselor. And I said, what does the counselor specialize in? And she says, grief counseling if you've lost a child. I said, you haven't lost a child. Why have you been doing that for 20 years? And that's why I'm so like, God, really screaming, like, what problem are you trying to solve? Does it match your healing strategy? Don't tell me scars last forever. Don't tell me you can never heal from trauma.
Oh, you can.
Don't tell me you have flipping PTSD. Are you solving the right problem, or are you walking in circles? Like it. So very first, what problem are you trying to solve is obviously the beginning of the framework. And there's a whole chapter in my book about who can help me solve that problem.
Amazing. Because that a lot of people who don't know how to make decisions also don't know how to find information. Does that make sense? And like synthesize it.
Yeah.
So that's part of it too.
Well, and I do want to be kind. Like when I started looking up narcissism in 1920, it was like never mentioned. And in 2020, it's like, you know, every article in the whole
every
world,
ex is a narcissist, which I hate, but that's another conversation.
Well, so I want to say, have kindness with people who were duped. You know, when I'm talking to someone who was in their 60s and they're recovering from a toxic relationship, they really did not have the information that the next generation's gonna have.
Or
so I want to say, or the free, or the freedom,
you couldn't get a credit card until the 70s. Yeah,
and it wasn't illegal to hit your wife until the 70s.
Great.
Right. I mean, that's what even we like have these domestic violence awareness campaigns, and people are like, why don't you jump on the bandwagon? I said, do we really need an awareness campaign that you shouldn't hit your wife? That's the wrong conversation. I just want to say that is not an awareness. I do lots of domestic violence work.
It's a
I do not need to do domestic violence awareness. It's like, hey, let's not talk about cancer until we're at the stage 4. Like I'm in the preventative cancer conversation, not the, oh, well, let's
don't hit your wife.
Stage 4 cancer awareness. Yeah, I mean, come on. Like,
which anyway, to be fair, is a good conversation, but also it's don't let toxic people stay. Don't let them stay. Like, but that also, again, is a decision. You have to choose to put yourself first. That's a decision.
So, which leads me to the next part of the framework. So 1, what problem are you trying to solve? 2, is this your problem to solve?
Ooh.
If you ask those 2 questions and you really get the right answers, your entire life will change. You will have more time. You will have more energy. You will have more power. You will have more money. You will like yourself more. You will, I mean, every single
literally everything gets better.
Literally everything. Your work problems get better. Your problems with adult kids get better. And
I love that. So what happens if the answer is no, it's not my problem to solve?
Move on to find a problem that is yours to solve.
How much do you see people struggle with that? Because I can tell you how much I see people struggle. They're like, but I want to help. It's not your problem.
And I say, so my biggest pet peeve, other than toxic people and healing strategies not working, are people who say, I'm great at giving advice, but I don't take my own advice.
So you're a liar.
That's exactly what I say.
So you're a liar.
I say, so you're dishonest. Because I guarantee you, with all my toxic person proof stuff, Amanda, you and I don't live that far away. If you came to my house, or we met in Nashville sometime for dinner, okay?
Oh, I forgot you lived there.
Oh yeah, no, I'm like, no, really, we can do this. Yeah,
girl, I'm coming.
So we're chilling out in Asheville, and you see my husband berate me, talk down to me, talk terrible to me. I'm assuming it would change your perception of me, and I think it should. I think you should say, "Whoa, this girl's been talking about toxic relationships," and then her husband just called her a bitch at dinner.
Right. And it makes you untrustworthy. And then you are living outside of your integrity. And again, I love this conversation. Like, yes, to everything that's happening. Living within your integrity is a series of decisions. Like, if you practice what you preach, practicing something is intentional. You don't accidentally live in your integrity. You don't accidentally live according to your values. Like, that is extremely intentional. And I love that you go with decision making, because I think, if we're talking about a pyramid, right? Kind of like Maslow's hierarchy is typically in a pyramid form. And you can't turn the pyramid upside down because it won't exist, obviously. What am I trying to say? I feel like the foundation of living intentionally, I love that you start with decision making, because that is the foundation. You don't even know, right? Deciding what your values are. Deciding what your values are is a decision. Deciding to practice them, decision. Like, if you can't make decisions, you can't figure out who you are. You can't change your mind if they no longer fit. You can't intentionally you literally have no intention. Like, you are just an amoeba floating through life in a prison, and it sucks. And think about who you respect. Like, people who have the self-integrity to solve their own problems. That's harsh. Right. And I love, so one of my rules as a therapist and coach is that I don't lie. I will never lie to my clients, even if they don't want to hear what I have to say. Like, I'm not in the business of lying. It's not going to happen. I don't lie to them. I don't lie to me, whatever. And I use language that can sound very, very harsh for a reason. Because if we're not calling things what they are, if I'm not saying, hey, you don't respect yourself, they get to lie and say, well, I struggle to love myself. You struggle to love yourself because you don't respect yourself. And we don't take care of things that we don't value. And I think people would be shocked in all my training, in all the toxic person proof stuff I do. I never talk about self-worth. Because it's not, that's a byproduct.
I talk about self-integrity. If you have self-integrity, right? I do what I say I'm going to do.
Yeah. Then you have self-worth.
Self-worth is not an issue.
And all of those are decisions.
Exactly. So what problem are you trying to solve? Get really clear. If you get stuck, you can write, what problem am I trying to solve, 7 times, in several levels.
Oh yeah. So you go deeper, layers.
Yes. And typically what I want you to see, because the most important part is I was on a training thing, and they were like, man, you're really action oriented. And I said, no, I'm results oriented. And for me to get the outcomes I want, I have to do something different, or I have to have some type of action attached. Right. It's not just self-worth is just such a passive, I just want to be. I just want to be. And it's I want to be better. Right. I want to be loved. I want to be successful.
I think it's too cloudy, if that makes sense. There's no path to there are a million paths to self-love, but if you say, I want to love myself, people will start with affirmations in the mirror. And I'm like, that ain't it, boo.
It's easy.
That ain't it, boo. Yeah.
No, because it's easy. right? And I had someone say me, they're like, oh, you should do affirmations. I said, no, I shouldn't. I was like, to my clients, they were talking about my clients. Like,
right.
I was like, no, why would I do something that I have not seen create results in people's life?
Yeah.
That is out of my integrity.
Yeah.
I will give them every chicken nugget that I give them is attached to a result.
Yeah.
And it's dishonest for me to just blow smoke up their ass.
And affirmations take a certain level. Like if the gap is too big, they don't work because your body knows you're lying. And again, if you're a liar, things don't work out for you. So I don't know if you see this too, but once people start going through this process with decision making, for me, I can always tell a point where things tip and things start happening for them. And that's how I know we're on the downswing of our work together. Because like I have a client right now who was a client a while ago, like school fell into place for them, traveling fell into place for them, like selling their house fell into place for them, like job opportunities fell into place for them. And they're just like, they messaged me this morning. They were like, I am literally crying because things are falling into place so beautifully. And I'm like, that's because you are in your integrity. You're doing the right work and the universe shows up for you. So part of decision making too is deciding to keep going, even when you don't have all the evidence.
Yes.
Until you do see the evidence. And that is such a beautiful thing to see. Because you're also solving your problems and not other people.
Yes. So you talked about that path, like you were talking about a path. And so even if what problem am I trying to solve, you asking that 7 times, most of those will create their own action plan.
True.
Right. And you don't need, as much as Amanda and I both like still work with people and still do this, most of the time you're very capable of solving your own problems. Because almost always those levels deeps, you could Google those answers. Like you can't Google what do you really need to do. But once you like, okay, the problems I'm trying to solve, how do I have a better conversation? How do I,
Googleable.
you know, so very doable. Okay. And something else I want you to kind of like, if you had I don't have sticky notes beside me, but if you had a sticky note on each of those things, is this an emotional problem to solve or a practical problem to solve?
Good question.
Or a legal problem to solve, or a communication problem to solve, or, you know, you can start to label those. I can't even begin to tell you how this will change your life. What problem you're trying to solve, getting clear about what problem you're trying to solve.
I love this.
Solving your own problems, taking 5 minutes, action plan. Tick, tick, tick. Okay. I can Google all these answers. Wow.
Which builds confidence.
Yes.
So then people are like, I want to be confident, but results build confidence. And practice builds confidence. So then when people say, I want to be confident, it's like, okay, well, take your life in your own hands. Figure it out. Learn that you can figure it out. That builds confidence. Because it's not that confident people are always good at the thing they're doing. They're just willing to try.
Well, and Amanda, I'm at a different place. Like it's interesting building this concept of decision making and the next book. I was not nervous about my first book. I was not nervous about launching my podcast. I was not nervous about any of that stuff because I was going like this, right? But now I've got some like real results happening, you know, like people, not that I'm a household name by any means, but there's plenty of people in the space too. Not yet, but there's plenty of people who, if I took a professional nosedive at this point, it would mean a lot. It would be a lot more dangerous. The fall would be a lot harder than it was when I was starting. Yeah. Do you see what I'm saying? And so it's interesting. I think I am one of the most confident people, like truly just like, I'll figure it out. And that's what confidence is to me. We'll see what happens. I can figure it out. We'll see what happens. I can figure it out. And it's interesting, this new framework and this new stuff I'm putting out that I'm like, well, okay, like the toxic people stuff, man, I am just so aligned. I am just so this and this. It's kind of like, okay, is this going to work? It's going to work? And so I say that to your listeners to say, I'm literally one of the most confident. I'm just so confident, my self-integrity. I believe in myself. And when I'm having to try something new and I'm having to put myself out there in a different way, there's another level that I'm just like, oh, okay, right. I hope this works. There's
it's just because it's new. Yeah,
sure.
Just because it's new. And again, the decision to keep going, to see it through, to try is another decision. Another decision.
Yep.
I love this. So much of it is the decision to just start and then decision to not stop.
Very much so. And so I did a live right before this. And so I want you to think about, so even in that 7 layers deep, I do want you to try to get clarity about what problem you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
Okay. Because then you can get an action plan.
Right.
But I want you to think about it as making a puzzle. Okay. So if you're doing a puzzle, most people kind of find the corner pieces or the edges and start there. But you could also say, oh, there's a very clear dog here. So I'm going to get all the dog pieces and put them together. I'm going to get all the river pieces and put them together. I'm going to get all the clock face pieces. All of that is right.
Yeah.
There is no like, well, if you don't start with the edges, the puzzle's not going to be put together.
Yeah.
And so as you look at that, if you do that 7 levels and like, okay, what problem am I trying to solve? What problem am I trying to solve? Don't get into fancy procrastination of, well, which is the right problem to solve?
Right. Just pick one, solve it.
The first one is the right problem, you know, like the first one that you can take action on.
Right.
Yeah. It's not as if you have to get the edges of the corner pieces, or if you don't start with the dog, or I'll say the cat. There's if you don't start with the cat, there's no chance. Hi.
He likes to sit in.
If you don't start with the cat, you're going to be a failure. Like that's not the way it goes.
Agreed. I love this. How long do you see it typically take for people to build the skill of decision making?
Wow. I've never been asked that question. I'm going to go 3 months on this one. I'm trying to think to see my clients on this. And I posted something and it said, is the problem that toxic people act like toxic people, or the problem that you stay and put up with the toxic
behavior? I saw that and I was like, yes.
Yeah. So I asked people, I said, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah.
So I was collecting all this data. And my favorite answer was from one of my wondrous women who has been trained in this decision-making process. And she said, the toxic people aren't your problem to solve. Solve your own problems, so you're going to get results. And I was just like, and the crowd roars, you know, because she was basically like, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Like,
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. What they're doing doesn't matter, you know? And she's somebody who's just kind of gone through my coursework. It's not even somebody I've worked with privately very often. And it's just really like, that's why I'm so obsessed with the language around it. It's like, how can I say something in a way that drills, I won't say drills holes because that sounds bad. I'll say it shoots light beams into shoots light beams. And it's like as simple as it can be. Is this my problem to solve? Yes, no. Okay.
You know what I find too is deciding to be up in other people's business is a great way to avoid your own work.
And that's usually why people do it, right? And especially I'm going to say mothers. I am a mother. Okay. So I'll be very honest and say I have talked to thousands of women. Yeah. Very few of them complain about their fathers. And I'd be curious to know what you said about this, Amanda. Even if their fathers were terrible, like I hear them talk about their mothers and complain about their mothers, and their mothers being in their business, and their mothers not knowing that it's not their problem to solve. And their mothers, and it's fascinating. It's like, man, and part of that is just like an unfair societal expectation on mothers. Sure. I'm going to start with that. And part of it is I'm talking to women. If I was talking to men, they're typically complaining about their fathers in a maybe stereotypical. I'm just kind of
I think it's both mothers. But I'll tell you what I find is it's typically because fathers are so absent. It's because they're so checked out. So the wound is different.
It's so unfair. I mean, I'm a mother.
Tends to be different.
Really, it's really unfair. I'm
wounding tends to be different, but you're not wrong. When I have people with mother wounds, it is an over involvement. It is I want my. So like, you know, in therapy, the shtick is like, it's always the mom. It's not, right? But oftentimes it is the mom, where parents don't heal. And so they're just way too involved. And what I experience is a lot of women and men, but more women will come into their 20s and 30s and will emotionally outgrow their parents' maturity and they struggle with that. And so they say, I don't understand. So like, you know, kind of their moms are like the original toxic person, not for everyone, obviously, but we all have problematic parents. It's just nobody's a perfect parent. Some are obviously worse than others. But when we surpass that emotional maturity, I think a lot of people struggle with that, because if you were never allowed to make decisions, if you were always prioritizing them, again, you make them the sun instead of you being the sun, instead of you being the center of the universe, you make them the center of the universe, which is normal when you're a child because you need your parents to keep you alive. So, you know, they kind of have to center them. But as you become an adult, you should start to shift that. And then circling back to what you said earlier, unless you find someone to continue that authority role instead of becoming your own authority, which again, only happens by making decisions that are good and right and best for you. But that really is a process.
It's a process. And I mean, I'm going to say, part of it's unfair on the mother expectation. Like I want to defend mothers a bit.
Yeah.
And I was having a conversation with some ladies, and one of them said, well, my husband wants to go away for a week, but I just don't think I can do it. I'm thinking about a weekend. You know, my kids are like having my right arm. Like if my kids aren't there, what are me and my husband even going to talk about? And what are we even going to do? Like, who am I without my kids? And I was like, man, if you were saying that in a therapist office about a spouse, right, or a boyfriend,
right,
go with boyfriend.
It would be codependent.
Go with boyfriend. It would be codependent.
Right.
And we somehow give like this pass. And I'm going to say society,
well, it's normalized,
maybe giving you it's normalized. And yeah, but the conversations you and I are having with women, I want to go back and say, society may be normalizing it. Your kids are not going to thank you for it at some point.
Right. And you're not going to thank you for it. It's miserable.
No.
It's miserable to not belong to yourself. Like, and a lot of people don't understand until they go through this process, and you are dead on when you say you have more energy, you have more clarity, you have more everything. When you're in the swamp, you don't realize how energetically exhausting it is to be in the swamp, because it's your normal and it happens slowly, right? Like, it's not like, you know, it happens overnight. Like that momentum builds pretty slowly, but it's so energetically out of alignment with where humans are supposed to be. And the bigger the gap, the bigger the misery, and the bigger the energy that we have to put into it to just exist. And people don't understand that until we start to close the gap, until who we are and who we want to be becomes much closer together.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is so important, you know, because you said like, man, it's just a lot less scary to try to figure out who your kids are than who you are. It just is, right?
And, you know, to be fair for mothers, like your kids have to be your world for a short amount of time because you literally have to keep them alive when they're really small. But then I find a lot of mothers struggle as the kids transition to being older, because you're just so used to making them your world, because you have to, like, babies are very helpless, you know?
Well, and there's a book called All Joy, No Fun, and it talks about the modern day parenting. And so I told you before, I worked in that mental health campaign for teens. I would love for you to have less conflict with your teen. Like I love teenagers. I hate that it's kind of this new, like, it's normal for teens to be acting like terrible and like almost abusing their parents. I mean, it's just terrible. Some of the stories I hear are terrible. The pandemic's been really difficult on, you know, anyway, but I'm saying this to help you not have conflict with your teens. I'm telling you this so that your teens like you as adults. I'm telling you this to preserve. I'm not taking your babies away from you. I am trying to set you up for success long term, and say, yes, in that book, All Joy No Fun, it said the most conflict comes from the parents who are most like in an unhealthy, in a codependent way, enmeshed. Yeah, that's a great way. Because obviously I want you to be involved. Like, I mean,
right. Don't just throw your kids out to the wolves and you're like, figure it out.
No. And, you know, I've fought recently to get my son in a private school. He loves school. Like, love school. I was very concerned about him in a public school setting, because I thought, man, are kids gonna like make fun of him? He likes school this much, or I just thought that it could have gone really badly. And who wants middle school to be even harder than it already is,
Right.
And it's been a great situation, all these things. My daughter, I just came back from a tournament with her this weekend for her sports. Like, I am not talking about not being involved in your children's life,
but being involved appropriately.
Yeah, I'm saying their life is not mine.
I need to apply that to everyone.
Everyone.
Their life is not mine.
Their life is not mine. I'm the support staff and setting them up for them to have a life that is outside of me, because they need to grow up and be fully functioning humans.
Do you have a filter for taking advice? Because I find a lot of people who struggle with decisions will just beg for advice. They say, I don't know what to do. Will you tell me what to do? I don't know what to do. Will you tell me what to do? And even if they get advice, they like don't take it. They just look for more advice. Because I have a framework for advice giving, and I'm interested to hear like what yours is for, like, if you don't know, right? Seeking knowledge from someone who has experience, who is knowledgeable, like that can be very valuable, but that doesn't mean their advice is always valuable. So what do you like, what's your framework for someone who says, well, I really don't know what to do. I know that I don't know what to do. I know where I want to get, I just don't really know how to get there. So I'm asking someone for advice. Like, how do people know if advice is even good for them?
Typically, the advice I listen to is advice I asked about.
Fair.
Okay. This is funny that you brought this up. I have probably had 15 to 20 people in the last 2 or 3 months tell me that I work too much. Cool. And I thought, you know what? I've never gone up to someone and say, I don't think you work enough. Because that would be rude. But you know what? I think what they said to me was rude.
Yeah.
I did not ask.
You didn't even ask. They just decided that you were.
No. Oh, you just need to slow down. I know you're always working. I said, one, I love what I do.
Right.
Maybe you don't like to work because you hate your job.
Yeah. Make a different decision.
I love what I do. It's fun. I'm in my most creative self. I hire out everything I don't want to do. Amazing. I wake up every morning to someone saying, you changed my life today. You work more. I'm killing it over here. Like, I am happy. Like, I'm hitting it at all bars. Like, it's all good over here. Like, I did not ask you your advice.
I think a lot of people feel threatened. Something I find about confidence is I have a very simple filter for if people feel confident in themselves, and it works every time, and it is dead on every time, is to tell someone your dream. If they support your dream, they have self-confidence. If they immediately try but what about, but are you sure? Have you thought about, that seems whatever, I immediately know that that person has no confidence in themselves, because people who believe in themselves believe in you. So I wonder if that's like a threat thing. And it may not be, whatever, but.
No, I don't want to assume like, oh, I'm so great, everyone's threatened. But it's been interesting how my relationships have changed as my career has blown up.
Yeah.
That's very telling. And I remember I was like,
shift. Yeah.
There is a shift. It's sad. It's sad. And I think, man, when I was not doing nearly as well, or when I was kind of pitiful, or when I was, 15 pounds heavier, or when I was this, people were nicer to me. They were. Like, when I was a little more pitiful, people are nicer to me. And that says everything about them and nothing about me.
Right. Like, and I was just going to say, like, talking about energy again, like when people are in alignment, when they live in their integrity, when they're doing what they say they're going to do, when they do what they want to do, when they make decisions that are right for them, that energy is so pure, is like the word that my brain is using, that it is literally repulsive.
Right.
To people who are out of alignment, who don't live in their integrity, who refuse to make decisions. And so part of this decision-making process too is understanding that, like, you may lose some people. Not everyone is a loss, but it is still a loss, if that makes sense. But because that energy shifts, like, some people will literally be repulsed by it because it proves that they're not doing what you can do. Does that make sense?
And the people who I don't live, in the same vicinity with,
Sure,
can easily look and say, well, things just kind of magically worked out for her. The people who I am in vicinity with saw how many times I said, I can't hang out tonight. I'm working till 10 when I was building this. I don't do that anymore, but the first couple of years.
Right.
Or they say, man, she really took a lot of risks, or man, she really invested a lot of money in herself, or man, like they know, what it took. Right. So, and they know that I did it over and over and over. So it couldn't be an excuse of like, well, it just worked out for her, so I couldn't do it because things just magically. There is no one in my life who thinks anything magically worked out for me. I have worked my butt off, and they've seen it, right? And I love it. I'm so happy. I love it. I had a vision. I wanted to create it. I'm not painting myself as a victim here, but it did change things. And I never say them, well, you should be doing this, or you should be doing that. I never, because that's a boundary issue for me.
Because you're also focused on your problem.
Right. And if they ask me advice, I'll say, well, do you want me to talk to you as a friend, or what I would talk to you about if you were one of my clients? And that's how I say it. It's kind of a boundary issue. I'm happy.
Yeah.
Which version of Sarah do you want advice from? Because I can just listen to you complain, and you can vent to me, and that's okay. You're my friend. I would not let my clients do it, but that's fine. Or
but
my husband,
I'm going to tell you, like, do some shit about it.
Right. But just, it's a boundary issue. If you want me to tell you what you could do to solve this problem, I'm happy to do so. But not unless you ask, because that is a boundary issue for me. Yeah. And I don't want to come across as a know-it-all, or even
and
lose my ability
unsolicited
to be a
advice is unsolicited.
Exactly.
So
just as I was complaining about it.
I may as well teach my cows to sing opera. I don't know what's best for you. So I want to give you my framework, and I'm interested to see what you hear about it. So I have like 3 rules for advice.
Yep.
Okay, you have to go at 10.
Yeah.
Okay,
sorry, I was like looking at that. I was like,
no worries.
Oh, we're getting really close. Yeah.
No worries. So we'll end with this then. So my framework is, do they have the life that I want? Do they have the life that you want?
Agree.
Because we're not going to ask people for shit that they haven't done what we do. Is it objectively true and or good advice? And then the most important filter, and I think you'll like this for decision making, is it true for you? Even if it's objectively good advice, if it's not true for you, what difference does it make?
Because you have the most information. Yeah, you have the most information of your own life.
Right.
And just like when people say you work too much, it's like, but
I like
happy. I'm energized. Right. If I want to take a nap, I will. If I want to go to bed early, I will. If I want to take a day off, I will. Like, where's the problem here?
Nowhere,
right? And it may feel like a lot of work for you, but I have energy.
But you're thriving.
Health. I'm showing up for my children. I'm showing up for my husband. Like, so I love that. You are the one with the most information.
I love that
on your life, but that's really hard place to start from, right? And there's a lot. I do want to say there's been a lot of healing and confidence.
Yeah.
I would. That's a really that conversation of like the advice giving
is different.
That's a little more intermediate and advanced, I would say. Amanda, you probably agree too.
Yes. Before you go, tell us how to find you.
Yes, SarahKRamsey.com. You can check out my book, Becoming Toxic Person Proof, and my podcast, Toxic Person Proof. And definitely check out my interview with Amanda. And and I will reach back out to you when the book comes out on decision making and problem solving.
Love you.
It will be very soon. Thank you for having me.
You are the best. Y'all, go be good. Go make decisions. Bye.